assuming that the exit polling is right, as we're doing this show live now, and we don't know that, but let's just take that as a hypothetical. The exit polling indicates that Hillary Clinton would win by 52 to 48. Okay, what happens then? Is that a win for Hillary Clinton? Is that a win for Bernie Sanders? And what are its implications? First of all, let's dispense with the obvious. It's a win for Hillary Clinton because she won. Okay, if that's the case. So, but what does it mean for the rest of the election? Well, I know that the Bernie Sanders camp believes that if they're within 5 to 7 points of her, that still was a very impressive in a state that heavily disfavored them because it's a closed primary. Independents that vote overwhelmingly for Bernie Sanders could not participate in the New York primary, and even more so closed than other states because you couldn't even switch to being a Democrat for the last 6 months. So people would have had no idea about Bernie Sanders 6 months ago, presumably, most of the people, and whether they would have been motivated enough to become a Democrat to vote for Bernie Sanders. So you couldn't get a state in some ways worse for Bernie Sanders. Of course, the upside for Bernie Sanders is he's from New York. He was born in Brooklyn. But on the other hand, as everybody knows, Hillary Clinton was the senator from New York. So in a situation like this, they think a 5 to 7 point loss would give them enough momentum for next week, where there is an enormous number of delegates up for grabs. Maryland, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Pennsylvania, which is a giant state that's still left, and that they could carry that momentum over, win some of those states, and then go on to keep on fighting all the way to California. I think that if Bernie Sanders wins tonight, it's gigantic. That's real momentum, and you pick up some delegates. Then you've got real momentum going into the 26th, and we got a race on our hands. And I'm so optimistic in that scenario that I would say that he's almost a favorite at that point, okay? But if he loses by 4, what's my assessment? Not good news, okay? So I think a lot of Sanders fans would say, hey, we did much better than the polling indicated. We did much better than expected. But we're running out of time, right? And we're running out of map. So at some point, you've got to close what is now a 194 delegate lead, pledged delegates, real delegates, that Hillary Clinton has. And at some point, you run out of states. So New York has 291 delegates. If he had swung it in enough time and picked up some sizable delegates there, as I just said, I think he's got a great case to make that he's going to win this thing, right? If he doesn't win it and he falls further behind in delegates, I know Maryland polling is really bad. Pennsylvania, he's been closing in. He's very unlikely to win Maryland, but if he could, likely to win Rhode Island, if he could somehow have enough momentum to pick up Rhode Island, Connecticut, and Pennsylvania, we got a ball game. But I don't know that a 4-point loss gives you that momentum. My guess would be not quite enough. Okay, what do you think?
Well, first of all, you have to look at the, I agree with just about everything you said, that you have to also look at the congressional delegates, because, and the congressional district delegates, because even if it's a 4-point loss, Hillary Clinton could obliterate him in congressional district delegates. And if that's the case, then your count is entirely different than what it was previously. So that's one of the things that they're going to be looking at as well. So it's not so much the exit polls, the percentages, the tightness of the race. You know, a loss is a loss. He needed a win in New York. He needs a win in New York. And if he gets that win in New York, it does, I would have a tidal effect on this, especially going to Pennsylvania, 4th largest state, ahead of California. What happens also is if he loses New York, a lot of that polling is going to change, because as voters see his viability, they've sort of gone with him. As voters won't see his, see the lack of viability reemerge, then they're going to go away.
So one more thing before we get to Jimmy's thought on this is that if he loses New York, I think the press is going to say, yeah, you lost, wrap it up, right? And that goes to the viability point that Michael's making, legitimate or illegitimate, right or wrong, that does affect some voters, right? And could affect enough voters in Pennsylvania and Connecticut to make a difference. On the other hand, if he wins, the headlines, even in a media that I think is stacked against him, have got to say, shocking upset, right? And if that's the case, then everybody just sits back and goes, whoa, it turns out he is viable, right? It turns out he can win.
But has the media covered any of his wins in that way so far?
Michigan,
with the exception of Michigan. Yeah.
Michigan game close.
But I think
Michael,
that, in fairness, though, I think that the streak that he's been on, I think has been covered fairly by the media. And they've used it as a point of narrative in New York to say, hey, listen, this guy's winning everywhere he goes. Yeah, they're caucuses, but this is what he's taken to New York. So yeah, his delegate count has not been good. It hasn't ever been good. It's been better because he's been winning. So I think the media is saying, listen, the most important thing he can do is create momentum, which he's done, which is why it's 4-point exit poll coming out of New York right now. So I think that the media has covered that part of this campaign very effectively and very responsibly in terms of saying this is momentum, and that's what this is about. It's not about the delegates, because the delegates still look grim for the moment.
Yeah, look, this is just based on headlines that I've seen today in regard to the New York primaries. And the thing that is overwhelming is just the question of, should Bernie Sanders drop out if he doesn't win New York? And once you frame it that way, it kind of sends this message to the electorate that he doesn't have a chance, that he's not a viable candidate,
But
that he's more of a distraction.
But they have done that with every I mean, you guys are focused on the Democratic race more than the Republican race. But they've done that with every Republican at every turn. If Rubio doesn't do this, should he do this? If Kasich can't come in third, better than second in New Hampshire, why is he even in the race? If Ted Cruz loses Texas, should he stay in the race? I mean, it happens all the time. It's happened throughout this race to every candidate who hasn't been the favorite. Even Jeb Bush got it. And Jeb Bush at that time was the favorite because of all the money he had and because of the name he had and because a lot of us were wrong about Jeb Bush and how well he would do in this race, and nobody predicted Donald Trump.
And at the time,
But I'm just saying there is this idea that they do that. I mean, that is a narrative. Every race.
So, and at the time, Jeb Bush did say about the media, they're kicking me out. They're kicking me out. Okay, come on, give me a break. Okay.
Let's clap.
All right, so Jimmy, optimistic note or no?
So what I will say is I understand that there's less territory in which we can make up ground, but we are coming. And in fact, after New York, so right now he's down 194 delegates. So after New York, if it's a tie, which it looks like it will be very close, he'll still be down roughly the same amount of delegates with 1,674 delegates still to go. So
That is
think
a lot
about
of delegates. That is a lot of delegates.
He's down less than 200 delegates with 1,600 delegates still remaining to be awarded. So there's lots of room for lots of things to happen. Don't freak out. And the fact that this is all those things you said, Cenk, this is a closed primary. You had to decide 6 months ago to be a Democrat. He kills with independent, all that stuff. And, California is not a closed primary, right? So it's a semi-closed primary. So I'm just saying, don't freak out. I will say the opposite. I will say, wow, that is what amazing progress he's made. And by the way, he was giving a speech today in Pennsylvania. There was people, again, lined up for blocks and blocks to get in. And Bill Clinton was there a few weeks ago, couldn't fill half a high school gymnasium. That's true. So I'm saying, if it ends up right now, how the exit polls say, it still looks very good going forward. 1,674 delegates remaining. He just made up 6 points in California. So I don't freak out. Lots more to go.
So I hear you on that, but even in that math, then in order to pick up to about the 200 delegates that he needs, he's got to have 900 to 700 delegates going forward. Okay.
Well, that's what a lot of the people are doing. I mean, these are proportional, unfortunately, and he needs a blowout. Your guy needs to blow someone away in a big state, and that hasn't happened yet. And Michigan was great. I mean, it was great because it changed everybody's perception. It was just an incredible night for the Sanders campaign. But he needs to win a state, like really win a state. In order to, because your numbers are right. They don't lie any more than the numbers that exist right now. But they've got to win a big state.
Okay, so let me just do final thought on that, right? So, look, he won some states that are larger in big numbers, like Washington. Boy, he blew her out in Washington, right? And the Michigan comeback was unbelievable, the upset that he had. He was slated to lose by 18. According to the polling, he won instead by 2. And he even in states he lost, Illinois and Missouri, he actually did much better than the polling indicated. So he's put a lot of points on the board now in that sense, both for momentum and in the real world in terms of delegates. There was a couple of elections that really, if he had picked those up, would have given him more momentum and a couple more delegates. Massachusetts, he barely lost. If he'd actually won Massachusetts, Nevada, I don't know if you call 5-point loss a barely losing, but that was a caucus he could have won. Now, it probably hurt him that those were earlier in the process. If they were later in the process, he probably wins those, but they weren't, and he lost them, right? And that hurt him, and I thought he did, I know he did a little bit better than the polling in Ohio, but he lost pretty badly in Ohio in a way that surprised me, honestly. So if he had gotten any of those, I think we would be having a different conversation now. But he didn't. He got a lot of big wins and some wins much bigger than expected. But that put him in a situation where he had to win 8 out of 9 to get to New York. And then he won 8 out of 9. He did, which was amazing. And a lot of those wins were much bigger than expected. But then that was supposed to put him in a position where he narrowly wins New York, right? Which then leads to possibly winning in Pennsylvania and going to California, where you're going to have enough delegates to pick up, even by Jimmy's math, right? So I don't know, Jimmy, that a 2-point win versus a 4-point loss is all the difference in the world, but it might be. It might be given where we are right now in the delegate count.